Hey, it's Chris. We're back. Lands of Galzyr, second time around. Expansion content, dreams and mysteries. What do you need to know? How have things changed? Are things any different? Does this game appeal to you now that it's more of a known quantity? Highs and lows and everything else in between. Talking about what dreams and mysteries has in store for us. You ready? Let's go. So, quick recap here at the beginning. Overview, Lands of Galzyr, what is it before we get into the heavy side of Dreams and Mysteries if you're not as familiar with it first time around. This is an open world adventuring app-driven game where you take on the role of an asymmetric character utilizing their various skills in order to progress through card-driven story narrative. Make sense? What you have in front of you here is a board where you are going to be traversing from point A to point B, going from place to place, activating numerical places on a location in order to take specific actions in order to complete quests, achieve objectives, get items, or anything else in between. Very open world, very Zen-like. Now, Dreams and Mysteries is offering us a little bit more from that aspect. Some of the criticisms of this game, or some of the pros and cons, if you will, for the game in a nutshell, right? It's very open in a linear but non-linear sense where you can have quests, you can abandon them, there is a main overarching, but you can kind of traverse at your own speed. Using the app-driven system based on the numbers that are located on the locations or the cards themselves to then continue on the progression. So one of the main things that Dreams and Mysteries is bringing us is a little bit more of that progression. It's giving you some more asymmetry, a little bit of personal player power, as well as a little bit of an overarching further quest in a mysterious manner. No spoilers, right? And so that was one of the big main criticisms in the first place was, well, there's not as much connecting it. There's not as much of the asymmetric aspects of things, apart from, say, the starting items or the starting quests that you may have to begin with that may give your character slight asymmetry, or even the skill check markers on the characters themselves, as you can see here, getting up to 4 of them on a place, which then allocates which of the different dice you're going to be using on said skill checks in the first place. Then you can rearrange them utilizing those cards and those bonuses that are gained, but you may not be able to get 2 blues on here without sacrificing, say, your yellow. And so how do you want to make your character, or give them what strengths in what ways? New character with this expansion, Noku and Umi, working together, giving you, again, a slight difference from having 2 in 1. If you were a fan of this game the first time around, with the progression system, the app card-driven storytelling style of things, with those skill check-based die rolls that you're going to be doing in order to get enough success to potentially succeed in some various way, well, this game just gets more. It doesn't expand differently, it just expands. You're just getting more sheer content. So the bottom line of it is, here at the beginning of the video even, is that if you weren't a fan of the base game, this isn't going to convert you. If you loved the base game, this is just going to give you more of something that you loved with a little bit more depth. I mean, it says right here, right? Personal stories, special abilities. That was the main criticism. The things that you may not have liked, though, the little bit of multiplayer solitaire, not really any different. You can take your simultaneous turns and sequentially still resolve your storylines to speed things up, because there is some downtime lagging with all the card drawing, the app-driven usage back and forth, so it doesn't get rid of that, but it tries to at least, shave off the corners so that you can get it a little bit more streamlined if you're one of those people looking at the higher player counts. For me personally, again, though, this is a 1 or 2 player game. This is just, I'm having fun with my kids' experience style with a narrative component, even though comparatively to other games that do this similar vibe, 7th Continent, 7th Citadel, anything more open world, Isofarian Guard, narrative is not its strongest suit either way. But again, I don't think that's saying anything that it's not already, flat out telling you at the beginning, right? It's not saying, hey, we're going to have the most immersive depth of storyline that you've ever seen. This is going to be, okay, we're going to piece things together. It's going to be nice progression. It's going to be understood. We're not going to overcomplicate it. We're just going to streamline it in that sense. And so, yeah, you are going to have a little bit of a more simpler avenue in all of those ways. But again, just like with the base game, this doesn't change the complexity of it, because accessibility has to matter. Those other games that I mentioned, the iconography, the learning curve, it just is significant. Whereas Lands of Galzyr here, well, it is what it is. You have no issue pulling it out, gathering your cards, your app-driven saved solutions, and then re-implementing it on a, well, whenever you want basis. Because that is the big criticism of games like this in general, is unless I make them a lifestyle, relearning them is often the biggest barrier to getting them back out. Because if you have one, you probably have 5 of them. And so this is going to be probably the most easily accessible of any in this genre or mechanistic approach, period. And the expansion doesn't get rid of that feature, because it is a feature. It's more of an accessibility game than it is trying to be the min-max catch-all everything else that a lot of these other games are trying to be. Say what you will, and your preference. The other thing that I mentioned, right, you have the skill swapping that's going on with these characters where you just can only get 4 of these. And so the other main criticism of this game was, well, Chris, you know, when I'm going around, right, like my character isn't progressing. Like a lot of the other games that I just mentioned, or things within this arc or this ilk, you know, even the Elder Scrolls game coming out, whatever else it may be, has progression. My character is progressing. How many times have you seen that on a show or an anime where you're watching it and you go, this character is exactly the same at the end of the game as they were at the beginning, or the differences are so minute that, you know, it may as well have, well, not actually tried to have any, you know, actual overarching character maturity, because there just wasn't any. And so this expansion is offering you a little bit more of that without going into spoilers. So if you were looking for a touch of that, this is going to be addressing that as well. It also doesn't stray further from the previous overarching how the game is played, right? Competitive, cooperative, solo. Competitive is still prestige points after a certain number of rounds, and then cooperative is seeing how much success you get by the time you're done playing and reading a global event. So again, very Zen open world like, and not necessarily going to give you the overarching endpoint that a lot of those other games are going for, but truth be told, it's not trying to. It's not trying to be anything that it's not. And so it may not be for you, but it's also not going to stray far from what it's trying to be in the first place. So the biggest thing with this game, just like I say with a lot of other ones, is that what you want? You can't get this game expecting it to be something else. This is going to be die-driven skill manipulation, card management, with a light overarching story narrative, now with some more personal asymmetry to give you a little bit more personal depth. If that's not what you're looking for, this game is not going to provide it, and it's not going to try and provide it, and it doesn't have to provide it. That's like when I say other games are trying to mimic all players and all counts, right? Oh, well, this game needs to have a solo mode. This game needs to have a cooperative mode. No. Things need to do what they're doing well. That is the bottom line. And this is doing it well. But it's also going to not be for people who are looking for significant upgrades, progressions, asymmetries by the end of things. Go get your dungeon crawl RPG narrative scenario driven game. This is not trying to emulate it, but it's trying to give you a different experience adjacent. You're getting more of everything, right? You've got your more local events, your global events, your items, your quests, your regular location events, as well as your ally and ability cards. Nothing is going to be drastically different in the gameplay progression or the actual mechanical overview of this game. You're moving your character around from place to place. You're going through your story progression right here. From your 300 cards available, you're going to be drawing, replacing, and replenishing and manipulating from the pile into your hand in front of you. The trickiest part with this expansion is that with some of these expansion card contents, for example, some of the quest cards in this, if you're playing a shorter game, or even if you're playing a slightly longer cooperative style game, some of these may not be fully utilized in one game. And so again, that's a blessing or curse, right? If you want to, you're gonna have to play a longer game. Or it's going back to what I was saying earlier about not having that overarching in the background, where you will with some of this. Also, very easily labeled at the bottom. Well, in this case, this is the prototype, but you can see that there's going to be differentiation. So you don't have to worry about integration with an expansion if you want to use it or if you don't want to use it. All of that's going to be easily, well, figured out either way. What is a meaningful progression is the other point you have to ask yourself, right? If you have a boulder in the way, can you push the boulder out of the way or can you climb over it? Is that meaningful enough choice-wise for you when most of the things are relatively straightforward? And again, it's going to be mostly based on this skill chart that you're going to be trying to utilize, maximize, and manipulate in order to match the dice that are going to give you enough success. That is more of the meaningful content that goes along with this. The other aspect of things, you know, the 2 seasons, because each card on this side of the map comes with 2 seasons, and the locations are going to be all different, and the manipulation of the spaces on the board and the things that are going to be available to you, again, it's going to be completely variable and, well, partially random, partially not, depending on the order of the cards, sometimes even in the decks that I showed you. Is that a make it or break it for you? Dreams and Mysteries takes Lands of Galzyr in this sense and just gives it more episodic storytelling that you're familiar with. It doesn't have this grand overarching good versus evil thematic vibe that a lot of campaign-esque crawler type scenario driven situations are trying to bring to us ad nauseum. So in that sense, it's not going to be a world saving end of destruction if you don't get to where you need to by the end of the game, which is refreshing and allowing you to take a breath where you don't have to feel like the pressure is always on. But again, this expansion doesn't stray far. It doesn't go outside the lines or the boundaries of what the original one did in the first place. So it's going to appeal mainly only to the people that loved it the first time around. It's going to make a good game slightly better for them. But even with what this is offering, the prototype components that I have for some of the asymmetry and the overarching story quests, it's probably not going to be whetting your appetite enough if that was your main I need it in the first place. There are a dozen other games that you can go and look for something like that with. It is what it is. It knows what it is. It's not trying to be a chameleon or anything else. So final thoughts on Lands of Galzyr and the expansion Dreams and Mysteries right now. Does it dramatically change things? Like I said, no, it doesn't. Is it going to be better for those that are wanting a little bit more, that already love the system that they've got in place? Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a little bit better without making it too much, right? The fear is with any expansion, you're going to overcomplicate things and take away the beauty and the simplicity in the first place that often a game like this brings, that differentiates it from the other, well, games similar in the first place as the main, well, appeaser or reason to get this over comparatively other games is because you can actually get this one played with a heck of a lot easier time, especially when you come back to it. And it's not overly complicated. Again, say what you will about the app and the cards. Well, yeah, it is a lot of taking out and putting back, and it is app driven, and that's going to turn people off. It's not any more burdensome than anything else tile-wise, card-wise, booklet-wise that you're flipping through nowadays with the narrative style of things in the first place. So sometimes I don't feel like having to flip through 4 booklets and not having to read 3 paragraphs of narrative. I mean, it's not horrible. At the same time, you will have some of that, so you can't completely get away from it, but you can kind of, again, skip over it a little bit if you just want to get to the nitty gritty. The skill manipulation system, yeah, it's probably not going to be enough for some people still in terms of progression. This gives a little bit more in terms of that, as well as just, you know, staying true to what it is in the first place. So again, it's more of a family open world Zen style of game, but it does what it does really well. And this expansion just does more of it. So it's not going to change your mind, like I said, but it's going to, well, just give you more of a good thing. And if you want more of a good thing, that's what this is doing. So there you go. Lands of Galzyr, prototype. They sent it to me to talk about again. So that's what we're doing. As always, let me know what you think. Comments, questions, or concerns down below. Subscribe, thumb it, do whatever else you do on a YouTube video, I guess. So there you go. Have a great freaking day. See you around.